Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to We Built an Empire. I'm your host, Kyle Wolff. Today's episode, we talked to a dear friend of mine about what it was like to manage an ICU during COVID and how she's found the love for nursing again. So without further ado, my friend, Nurse Angie.
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn. Yeah.
Hey Ange, how are you doing?
I'm good, Kyle. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being on. I'm super excited about this one. I know we kind of had to juggle some schedules and some technical glitches there for a second, but we got it. So thank you so much. I know I've kind of encroached on our time that we allotted, but yeah, I'm really excited to have you on the show. I think that it's going to give some depth and breadth to obviously the industry that you work in, but just kind of create a diversity from we have had other guests that are nowhere near in your profession or your field. So I'm just really excited to talk to you about this stuff. So why don't we just jump into it? Can you give us a little bit of your background as far as what you do on a daily basis for your career and your job?
Yes. Thank you. I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 14 years, and I've always been in some aspect of critical care. Critical care adult is my specialty, but I also do pediatrics and oncology. And for the last 10 years, I have been in management and or leadership type roles in adult critical care and step down.
And so is that primarily like what department are you in? Like ICU, TCU?
Intensive care.
Oh, okay.
Intensive care and step down. I'm in a rural community in a hospital that is small but serves a huge remote area as well as the surrounding towns. And so we are kind of a catch-all is what we call ourselves. We're a medical ICU, but we do a little bit of everything. We do cardiac, we do lots of respiratory stuff. And then a step-down unit is kind of not the regular medical floor, but it's not quite ICU. Either somebody's going to be getting better or they're going to be getting worse and they're going to get out of there. And so I manage those two departments. But because we're rural and we have to do a little bit of everything, we also do pediatrics in that step-down unit.
Gotcha. So is that a specific sort of specialty within the ICU and step down to be able to care for the pediatrics, or is it kind of just the nature of the hospital that you work in that you just have to treat all ages essentially? Yeah,
it's unusual. It's very unusual for a hospital to have a mixed unit like that. But yeah, it's just kind of what we have to do because of where we are. It would be a disservice to our community to have to make children and their families fly out of the area for general medical type stuff. Yeah.
Sure. Absolutely. So, I kind of want to go back a little bit. Obviously you've been doing this for as long as I think not as long as I've known you, but quite as long. And, I've always been curious. I think that you're exceptional at what you do, but I've been really curious as to why you sort of chose this career path. When I first met you and sort of came into your life, you were not doing this. And so when you chose this, it was like, for me, it felt like a huge leap to see you do that. But I've always been very curious as to why, like, what was your driving factor that said, I want to change everything and get into the medical field. That's a big leap for somebody to kind of do what you did. So what was your driving factor that was that light switch that said, I want to do something completely different and go towards this path?
Right. Well, I mean, it was a leap from what I was doing, but the leap was me saying, okay, this is what I'm passionate about. I just have to do it. growing up as a kid, my dream was to work for the Peace Corps. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew that seeing other people suffer it did something. It hit me deeper than anything else I could possibly imagine. And I've done some traveling throughout my life. And when I was traveling, I did some volunteering, and I felt like I wasn't doing everything I could. I wanted to help so much more than I was able to at the time because I did not have any training. And then I sort of forgot about that for a little bit and came back and got into the hustle and bustle of America and the United States and making money and partying and doing all those things that we get distracted with in our day-to-day life. And I can remember the very night I was living with my sister, and I was laying there and I'm like, I am so unfulfilled on a really deep level. And I thought about my time in India and in Indonesia, and I thought, I'm unfulfilled. I feel empty because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not doing what I felt I was here to do. Because if I can help somebody and feel compassion for people and maybe make something hard a little bit better, that is the one time I'm really, truly happy and full.
That's amazing. I can't imagine, I have no clue what you or any other person in the medical field went through for the last 2 years. I can't even begin to fathom or try and create this, imagery surrounding it. But I do have to wonder if because of this last 2 years and the extreme nature of, what you guys went through with the hospitals being overcrowded and treating patients that may or may not have made it. If that's kind of taken a negative toll on, I guess we could call it enrollment on, somebody wanting to jump into the medical profession, whatever avenue or career path that would be. And I do wonder if, like I've seen with other industries, they're still struggling to kind of recover to get back sort of what they lost, whether it be from burnout or whatever it was, or somebody just not simply wanting to go back into work. Have you guys kind of seen that in your profession as far as, maybe the lack of enrollment or people just being beyond burnout and just leaving this career that at one time was, maybe a little bit more stable?
Sure. Yeah, that's pretty complex, and it's there's a lot of different dynamics that play into that. We have there are some people that when it started to get hard, they just said, nope, I'm done. Those were a lot of people that were near retirement. So we lost a lot of people in the very beginning when it was scary, right? We're going into something that we didn't know. We didn't know what this was. We didn't know if it was going to kill us when we walked into a room. We didn't know if we had the right protection. So there's a lot of psychological things that play into that. And some people just weren't going to do it. The rest of us, we were like, okay, we're going to do this, and we're going to do this together. And we're going to see, because if we can go in these rooms and take care of these people with all of the best protection we have, and it's still going to kill us, then it's going to kill us all anyway. So we may as well just go for what we can do. And so once we got over that fear factor, then it was like, okay, let's just do this. And we all thought, this is 2020. We're going to get through this fast. And then it kept going, and it kept getting harder, and it kept getting worse. as far as the people, how sick they got, because it's not just about getting sick and recovering. It's the the pain and the suffering on so many levels throughout the whole process. It's not just hard on the patient being in that room. I mean, there are the sickest of the sick. They may or may not recover, and they may or may not survive this. Recovery looked rough. It looked like tubes and lines and tracheostomies and learning how to move again. And who knows what your quality of life is going to look like, but it's the financial burden. These people are sick and they're in the hospital for weeks and weeks and sometimes months, and their families are at home without them and maybe can't put food on the table. They can't pay their bills. They're losing their homes, losing their loved ones. And so it spreads not just to that person in that bed or their significant other, but to their family, to their community. The impact that has when one person is that sick is profound. And then we got the vaccine, and there was some hope. And then there was this strange dynamic. It was it went from, oh my gosh, thank you for caring for my loved one, and thank you for everything you do, to threats and mean and nasty. The patients that they didn't want to be there, but they had no choice because they were going to die if they didn't have help. But the families call and they would harass the nurses. They would threaten the nurses. As a leader in that unit, I would spend hours a day trying to field these phone calls and do what I could to help them feel comfortable. And at the same time, we were working so hard. Our ratios were, these patients, they're so sick. Usually that's a one nurse to one patient with some help. And we had four patients apiece, and they're all the sickest of the sick. And I'm not saying we did this alone. Oh my gosh, did we have help? And I can go into that a little bit later. But I had moments where I had to check myself because it was so exhausting being hated by the people you were trying to save and their loved ones, that I had moments where I had to remind myself that this was a human and this was a patient, and I still had a duty and a responsibility to care for that person because I did everything I could to protect my staff. My focus shifted to, I'm protecting my staff, I'm protecting my nurses, I am protecting those that come in here, and I am going to do anything and everything to help them get through the day and show up again. And I did have to stop from time to time and say, it's also about the patient. But that's what those nurses were doing, but it was hard. We didn't want to show up every day, but we did.
Sure.
And so there was a lot of emotional trauma. And so we lost a lot of people. Now it's different, right? They might not have retired. They might still be in nursing, but they still struggle to show up every day. They struggle at home, dealing with what they've been through. They have relationship struggles. They're trying to love what they do again and get through that. It still persists with those that have been in it. And the new ones that come in, it's different. It's cool. Nursing's cool because you work 3 shifts a week and that's it, right? You come in, you check boxes, you get through your little task list, and there's something missing. There's something that I feel like that need and that passion and that compassion, caring for somebody. and really, truly your mission is to have a positive impact on somebody's life, on somebody's day, no matter how bad the circumstances are, if you can extend some love, compassion, and you can help somebody achieve their peace and their happiness, whatever that may be, all judgment aside, I don't see that happening in some of the newer people that come up. It's more of a rarity. And also lots of new people coming up and in. I don't think there's a shortage of people to hire, but there's a shortage of experienced people to hire.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how does that, I mean, obviously that has a trickle down effect on, I don't want to use the wrong terminology, but maybe, quality of healthcare, or at least somebody questioning the quality of the healthcare when you have, unfortunately, maybe lost, personnel, like specifically in your department, who have had years of combined, service, and they've had the experience that's needed to kind of give that. And not to say that, somebody coming in brand new to an ICU, they may have been a nurse elsewhere for years, but you can't get experience overnight. It's gained from years and years. So it's like, obviously that has to have some type of trickle effect with, I wouldn't say the lack of quality care, but the potential of there to be missed elements in that quality of care, right? Is that something that the industry as a whole is cognizant of, hey, we've got this young, fresh blood coming in, and, we have to be proactive in making sure that we're providing the quality that we need to be providing.
Yes. Do I think that, so it's complicated, right? Because this is not the time to give up or go down into that valley of, oh my gosh, these are all of the things that we don't know, all the things that can go wrong. And it's like, this is an opportunity. We all have to step up, those of us that do have the experience and the knowledge, and we have to work a little bit harder right now. There is a culture in healthcare, and it's shifting. It wasn't this way before. And, there's some stereotypes, right, where it's nurses eat their young, and physicians are mean to nurses, and there's no collaboration, and there's no teamwork, and it's kind of a dog eat dog world, and that's not acceptable anymore, and that has been, there may be places that are still that way, but I feel like I'm really, really fortunate to be in an environment and in an organization that really does have a culture where they say anybody can speak up. It doesn't matter if it can be a patient, it can be a family member, it can be a housekeeper, it can be a nurse, it can be a doctor. Anybody that sees something that's like, that's not right, they speak up. And it is non-punitive. It is really this culture of safety. And we have to fall back on that, because you're right. We may have a crew on that's not done certain things ever. They've been trained on it, but if you don't do it, it's very difficult to take your training session and apply that in a real world setting. And so the hope is that we create those of us that are experienced and in leadership roles, create a culture where it's okay to ask, where it's okay to say, I don't know this, and I'm going to reach out to somebody that does. It does put some pressure on those of us that are doing it. I will get phone calls at 1:00, 2:00 in the morning on how to do something. But my staff knows that I am available. If they don't know something, they ask. I make sure that I go in. It's a 24/7. Most leaders don't, realize that there's a whole night shift, right? And you have to have a presence there as well. And so they need to know you as their manager. They need to have a relationship with you. And they need to know that whatever happens, it's okay. If there is a safety event, if there is a medication error, I don't care how big, how small, the whole point is to have that team feel psychologically safe to say, I screwed up. Because then what can we do? We don't punish. I mean, there's people that malicious, I intentionally did something to harm somebody. That's not the case here. But we have to know, everybody has to feel safe enough to come forward when there is an error so we can put systems, so we can investigate it. Is it knowledge? Is it process? Is it system? Like, what is the root cause of this error? And let's fix it. Let's start, from the very bottom up, from the beginning of the process to the end, and let's put as many things in place as we can to reduce that from happening again. And I think when we're in a situation like this, that's the most important. And that there's no hierarchy. It's a team. There's no way we could do this.
Sure.
alone.
Everybody's an equal party. I mean,
Yeah.
I can, so is there any, I mean, I'm sure there's miles and miles of data. But having come from years of oil and gas, they, obviously oil and gas years ago was terribly dangerous operation. People purposely didn't report things that were unsafe. They would just do the job and kind of move on past it. And I mean, OSHA's got books and books and books and books on however many people died because they weren't doing this thing. So you've got a lot of these bigger corporations that were coming in and they were setting in, root cause analysis and, going back to the 5 whys and, reporting safety measures. Like if you start at like the baby steps, but they always kind of had this like, when you go through like an immersion process with a bigger company, it's, here's the steps and it's going to take X amount of years for this to have this ripple effect through so that the community of this company grows into this safer environment. You can't completely ever eliminate everything, but in theory, you're supposed to be able to. So from the medical profession, as far as this new thought process of, everybody's safe. You're supposed to report this. There's not going to be any repercussions if you do report it. What does that in theory look like as far as, how soon will that expand to the masses within the community of the medical profession or that world, if that makes sense? Did they say, is it cyclical? Does it take 2 years with the same person, following those guidelines, or does it take 5 years, or does it take 2 separate generations of healthcare to have the industry change and correct itself to operate like you're talking?
Well, the feds are going to fix that for us, right?
Sorry. Well, we're going to cut this gigantic laugh out in post.
There's a change. Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're talking about is a high reliability organization, right? You've just hinted on some of those terms in oil and gas, nuclear aircraft or nuclear power plants, aircraft carriers, or airlines, that kind of thing, where errors are catastrophic. Same as healthcare, right?
Sure.
And so yeah, this shift has been going on in healthcare for a long time, for 20 years. I want to say maybe even longer. There was a big white paper published called "To Err is Human" a couple decades ago, and that sparked a shift in healthcare to this just culture, this high reliability organization type culture. It just didn't. It wasn't catching on, right? And so I feel like with COVID that it just jumped full steam ahead. It's difficult, but then there's the federal Medicare and Medicaid, most facilities take Medicare and Medicaid patients and they want to be paid, right? It's still a business. Healthcare is still a business. It can't be provided for free. Somebody's got to pay for it. But there used to be, it used to be paid, people used to get paid, or hospitals, organizations used to get paid by number of procedures they did. I gave a med or I did a procedure, you got paid this amount for this. And that's not the way it's going. The whole entire reimbursement system is being shifted towards a pay for performance model, which has really prompted the top. I mean, as far as healthcare organizations goes, I'm like way at the bottom, when you compare like how high up it goes into the levels of administration and policymakers. And so that culture has shifted, and it's like, okay, let's take what we know from all of these organizations that have been doing it for a while, and let's do it. Let's go all in. The challenging part, it's all great stuff, and I feel like we're really taking off within our organization on this process. It is a process, though, right? But the challenge in healthcare is that each person is different. No single person is exactly the same. No treatment that we give them is going to do the exact same thing. Their resources aren't the same. Their family support system is not the same. Their community is not the same. What they need for them may be different for every single patient. And so how do you take that variability that you can't change and still work this process?
Sure.
That's the challenge. That's really, really interesting in healthcare.
Yeah, I can imagine having obviously the background is like in oil and gas, a widget is a widget. It's like
right.
That valve blew up because it was over X amount of pressure. That's the same valve. It's manufactured 10 million times over. But I'd have never thought about it like that. No one person is a single widget. Everybody's different. So you said, what was
person.
You said something that struck a nerve, and I want to ask. So just so I understand, so pay per performance, is that how it sounds? Like you do a heart surgery, somebody doesn't die, it's a plus. I mean, obviously you don't want someone to die, but I'm being a little bit irrational and saying, is that how it's literally written?
No. It's complicated.
Okay. Okay.
It takes a team of specialists to figure all of that out. But basically, if we can take, a surgery, or somebody comes in because they have an infection in their blood, they're septic from something. If they don't get the end, we know that based on the best evidence available, that they need so much fluid resuscitation and broad spectrum antibiotics within a certain amount of time to have the best outcome. So when we review a chart, did we meet those measures? Did we give their adequate amount of fluid? Did we do everything that the best evidence shows in a timely and efficient manner and in a safe manner? It's the outcome is sometimes the outcome, but did we do everything we could the way it was the way that we know the evidence says it should be done? That's standard practice.
Gotcha.
If I we put in an indwelling device in somebody, be it a catheter of some sort, we know that if we put in a big catheter in a vein in your neck, and we know that so many people die from central, these bloodstream infections related to the central line. But we know that if we put the line in under a sterile procedure, if we do the proper technique when we administer medications, by the proper dressing changing techniques, the proper cleaning techniques, and we remove that line as soon as we possibly can, that we're going to minimize any complications related to that line. But if we did not follow the best standard of care and the best evidence, and that person gets an infection from a central line that was in, then why should we get paid the same amount?
That's brutal though, because I mean, you just hit the nail on the head before this. Is like no one person is exactly the same. So, I mean, they could have, whatever other ailments coming into there. You're treating this one scenario and you're looking at this, but like, I can't.
Yeah, it's complicated. But again, every person is in, but we know that best practice, all of the evidence says we do these things. Did we do those things? Sometimes we can do everything and it still has, something still happens. But the whole point is, are we talking about it? Are we looking at it? Are we deep diving every single one? And if we are finding gaps, are we making sure that we have a process and a project in place to improve that? It's constantly changing, and it is constantly changing because like I said, it's different every time.
Sure.
in some regards.
I can't put. I'm a dum-dum, Ange. So I can't put myself into that train of thought, but it just seems like it's a terrible uphill battle. I mean, you can see the whatever the squiggly line is from dot A to dot B, but that seems very hard to try and model efficiently because I mean, everybody is completely different. That's, I've been thinking about this lately, and it's, I don't think that I feel this way personally, because I do have faith in our medical system, but just given the kind of tumultuous time we just went through and coming out of COVID, do you feel like, and this question might be driven from just a lot of the misinformation that was out there. Do you feel like people in general have lost a bit of faith for whatever reason, like in our medical system, or do you feel like it's still strong? Like, I mean, I feel like if I need to go into the hospital, there's no questions asked. I'm going in, regardless of whatever's on the news or the media or the COVID or the vaccines don't work. Like I could care less. I know that if I'm hurt and I need to go to a hospital, I'm going to go seek medical advice and attention from a trained professional. But you kind of do read on the news anymore, or you're in these chat forums or even in open forum conversation with the guy at the gas station. And I feel like there's this weird like undertow of, it's like people have just, for some reason or another, just have lost this bit of faith, and they're willing to like take a risk with their own body and their own health by feeling like they know better. Do you feel like people in general are kind of getting back towards, or have they lost a bit of faith because of the last 2 years in the medical system?
I don't know if that's isolated to the medical field though, right?
Yeah. I'm just asking because that's where you live and breathe. I think people have lost faith in a lot of shit in the world, but I'm just saying specifically.
When people need care, they come and get it, and the hope is that we're human. We nurses, we spend a ton of time with our patients. Our physicians, they're humans, and I think we do have some people. We've always had some people come in and they've been, I'm not. They hate hospitals. It's not a great place to be, right? It's not. Nobody wants to go there. And so we already work in an environment where nobody wants to end up, especially in the ICU. I'm like the last person anybody wants to see in a day.
Sure.
But, they're still going to come in. And I think it's our job and our responsibility as providers, as nurses, as whoever, it doesn't matter who's walking into your room, to build those relationships. And to be persistent. I haven't noticed a huge day-to-day change in people being afraid to be there any more than, people think twice about walking into a grocery store or sending their children to school because we're bombarded with all of the shit that happens all the time. That's all we see. I mean, what if our continuous news programs and all of our streaming services and all of these things that we were watching all of the time were all of the wonderful things that happen to everybody every day? Would we worry about sending our children to school if we never knew there was a school shooting?
Sure.
So I think there's a dynamic that is systemic throughout our entire culture in America and probably within the world. I remember this was like 22 years ago, right? I'm on a flight back from, it was my second trip to India. And I was on a flight home, and I was sitting next to this young girl, and she was so excited. She was a college student, and she got an internship at this place in Baltimore. And we just got to chit-chatting and talking about our trips, and kind of developed a little bit of a relationship on the flight. We were comfortable with each other. And she said, "Can I ask you something? Because I'm really afraid of this." And I said, "Sure, anything." And she goes, "I am so afraid of getting shot." And like, this is 22 years ago. She's like, all we know over here is how many people get killed on the streets. And I'm like, wow, really? I mean, that was shocking. And so, yeah, I think that there is a bigger, I guess to that point, I can be a little long-winded, but I think there's a lot of talk about it, but when you're in that moment and you have to go there, that it's not that bad.
Sure. Absolutely.
I think most of the feedback, you're never going to make everybody happy. You're never going to get it all right. We can't even do that in our own children, right? But, once they're there and they start to know us, and we spend a lot of time with people in the ICU. They're there for typically a longer period of time. Their families are a little more involved in care, because a lot of times these patients can't speak for themselves. So we develop relationships with their families before we develop relationships with them. And that was honestly the hardest part about COVID. Nobody could come in and visit. And so of course you're just going to sit there and worry and wonder, like, what is happening with my family member? I can't lay eyes on them. And that would be scary. That would be scary for me. Not to be able to see my husband or my mother if they were in the hospital during that period of time. You question it. We're protective. Mm-hmm. But I think that now that people are able to come back into the hospitals and they're able to be involved in their loved ones' care, that will get better.
That's good. I'm glad to kind of hear that, because there's just so much. Yeah, I mean, you so many topics there. There's so much negativity, especially in every news outlet on the world. I was just talking to a friend the other day, and we were joking about it, but it really, the underlying context was less of a joke than we were making it out to be. But he's from Chicago, and we went to school in Arizona, and every night you'd see WGN news, like somebody dies on the L, right? Somebody gets stabbed or shanked. And he's like, dude, at that time, he says he's 30, he was older than me. And so he's like, I've ridden that train every day my entire life. I've never seen somebody get stabbed. I've never seen somebody get shot. Mm-hmm. It's like, it's the one-off, it's the 1% that's all of a sudden it's clickbaitable. It's blood and gore. And it's, and then next thing you know, somebody's dying every single day as far as the news clips are coming out. So it's just, I think there's so much of that in the world in general. And especially, with the healthcare and COVID and everything, there was, people could easily call it misinformation. But it was weird having been outside of it too. When it first hit, it was so unknown. I mean, to everybody. Mm-hmm. And it was scary. It was super scary. And everybody was hyper cautious. We happened to be in Texas at the time, and Texas shut down fairly soon. And then they kind of reopened up, which I don't know whether that prevented anything or not. But, it was just like, all of a sudden it was like we shut down, and you have this data coming out from whatever news media or podcast you're listening to. And it's like, people started questioning it. It's like they were rolling the dice a little bit, like, well, let's see what happens. And then they felt like they were being lied to. And then it was like, just so much, it felt like everybody just opened up and just blah, like, here's all this, pick and choose what you want. It's a la carte. You can, and,
scary, but I mean, the one thing I went back to every time, I mean, the days were full of, and these were 12 to 14, 15, 16 hour days every day for weeks on end. And I would just sometimes just take a breath. It was constant bombarding of put out this fire, do this, do that. It was not a lot of time to process anything. And I had to make we all had to make a lot of really fast decisions, the best we could with a moment's notice. And we broke the rules sometimes, I met with families in their cars in the parking lot of the hospital with Zoom tablets so they could see their family. I mean, we would do whatever we could, because ultimately, the only thing I wish didn't happen out of all of that was the mean and the nasty. There was just no reason for it. And no matter what somebody was saying to me, I got called horrible names, murderers, whatever, you name it. It was mean and nasty. And I just told myself every time, know where they're coming from, feel their pain, feel their fear, and just do everything you can to empathize with them, and do everything you can to try to make it the best you can. Make the best decision you can for everybody, be it keep the staff safe, keep the patients safe. But what if everybody looked at everything that way? What if everybody did the kind, nice thing, no matter if you agreed or disagreed?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I forget what the saying was, but it's like, the two uncontrollable emotions are love and hate, right? And it's like, I think that this little time period showed that even more uncontrollable emotion is fear. And I think people...
Oh, that's right. Visitor.
Are you building a fort?
No. Go on.
Yeah. So, and it was just, I don't think people really understood how to act or how to treat that fear for such a long duration. And unfortunately they acted terrible to one another. That isolation drove people to do and say horrible things online and even in person, as if they were completely, anonymous or had absolute anonymity. It just, like, the filter was gone and we could just say and do anything and everything that we wanted to. And, I'm slowly feeling a little bit of that maybe waning, slightly. I still think that, I hope that it wasn't so long of a period of being in that mental framework that it's going to have continued effects. I think that at least what I'm personally experiencing with a lot of people is that's kind of starting to deplete itself. It's because they're realizing that they are back in the real world. And it's like, I can't treat people like this. Now I know maybe there's going to be people where they built horrible habits and they're just going to be that person forever. But I hope that emotion, that reactive nature, bite your neck in half in a moment's notice. I do hope that eventually dissolves and we do turn into a decent society again, at least as much as we can.
We never know where anybody else is coming from. And it's really important that we approach every situation that way, just non-judgmental, open. And we're always changing. I'm not going to be so hard and fast in my opinion that it can't change. My opinion is what it is right now, but I will tell you it is subject to experience and new knowledge coming my way. And I may say something today that I don't believe in 5 years from now. But as long as there's intent and there's thought behind it is what's important. And I think it's the same in healthcare. We know what we know right now, but it is always changing. There are so many new things coming, and we learn new things constantly. And that was really evident during COVID, how fast things changed. I think it's been that way a lot in healthcare. It's been that way as long as I've been in it. But I think the rest of the population now is aware of that kind of constant, we know this is what we know. And then it was all accelerated because so many people were working on the same problem at the same time that the science and the knowledge grew very, very quickly. And it's going to continue to grow. I mean, what if everybody was working on cancer in that same way? I mean, that's what everybody was doing. It would change so fast. And so I think that because COVID was so publicized, it was talked about constantly in the news, everybody saw that rapid change, and that's what contributed to some of the confusion and mistrust, right? Because it was this way one day and then this way the next.
Sure. Yeah. Well, it's like, it was weird. It was like, I kind of remember it even personally. I felt, and I think I was just so exhausted at one point in time. I had gone a whole year, then caught COVID. I was okay. My wife was pretty sick. And about the 5th day of, bed rest, I was getting really worried. And it was like, okay, if this is one more day, we're going to the hospital. That's kind of where my mind had shifted to. But thankfully, she got better. We got better. We got beyond it. And it was like, I can't quite remember, when it was, how many months it was, but I just found myself getting, and I hate to even use this because I feel like, I would say burnout on it. And I know that your burnout because of COVID is 10,000 times amplified over my burnout, but I think it was everything like compounded. It was the shitty attitudes of everyone. It was everybody was just sick and tired of being cooped up. And it was like, I remember that feeling of being like, I know that this is absolutely real. This has horrible impacts on certain people and families, but I am so over this affecting us personally. Like, I am so ready for life to move beyond. And it was like right about the time, when everything was coming out with the vaccines, and I felt like people thought that was the magic pill, and whatever, the data will come back on that. But it was that around that time where it was like, I feel like sort of the weight was lifted a little bit on society. It was the hope. It was everybody started to kind of do things again. And, I just looking, outside looking in on it, I hit that wall of like, I can't do this anymore. I felt like it was having a negative impact on me personally. I could see it with my children, and it was like, life has to go forward. And whether we do that as a group or we're like in these 1,000 different factions and we're trying, like, as like, I felt like at least good or bad, that's not the argument. I could care less what somebody's view is on the vaccine, but at least the vaccine kind of gave this like common ground. And people felt like we can, as a society, move forward. Like we can get back to some form of normalcy. And, it was just that I couldn't, had that vaccine not come along at that point in time, whether people took it or didn't take it, not the debate, but had it not come at that moment, I don't know how much longer I could have been cooped up without having been the very person that I would be like, go sit down, take a break. I was at that point of being like, almost like, for lack of better terms, like, fuck it. I'm going in public and I'm doing this, and I've already had it. It didn't kill me. And it was like, I was willing to kind of roll the dice, and I, gratefully nothing did happen to my family, but, I can imagine that other people that maybe they weren't so lucky or that were experiencing those same feelings, like they couldn't quite, maybe they reacted too soon, and and then they took that out in anger and just put it out onto the world. But
I think we were all there. I mean, oh yeah, I was ready. I was ready for it too. I mean, I think we were all in that same place. Like, oh my gosh, this is either going to kill me or we're going to get past it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is, but yeah, it's been really challenging. And I think we're all ready to just have some normalcy. It's, the burnout, if the burnout is real, but it's not the time. Now is the time to say, okay, we can't dwell. Part of me is like, we can't dwell on the past and what's happened. We actually have to move into, like, we have to have hope. We have to now work really hard to close all those gaps that all those things created. I mean, within our own, in every aspect, right? We have, in healthcare in particular, it's like, okay, we've just been through hell. Everybody that's been through it is exhausted. We have knowledge gaps, we have resource gaps, we have supply chain gaps, all that stuff that we see in the grocery stores and everything else. It's impacting healthcare as well. But it's not the time to stop. It's not the time to give up. So, to your point, like on the fuck it part, like, yes and
See,
no.
there you said it. It feels good, right?
It does feel good, but it's not the time. We have to work harder now.
Yeah,
we have to take what we've learned, and we have to apply it to make things better.
Sure.
Across
human beings,
everything. It's like, let's learn from this, everybody, come on. And we could do so much together.
Sure. Yeah. We as humans are quick to forget if it doesn't impact you directly, if it doesn't have a profound impact on you directly, we are quick as a being to forget something. Our memories will stack up upon each other and we'll move on. So if we just put it behind us, then we've learned from nothing, right? So that's very well said. Yeah. Now's the time to.
For the first time in 2 years, when I think about my job, my heart and my soul goes back to that original feeling. Like if I had a magic power, it would be to hug somebody or to think about somebody when they are at their worst, and whatever. I'm not going to judge and say what the right thing is or for each person. But if I now look at a patient and I look at a family member, and the one thing, if I could have a superpower, would be to take away that suffering, I feel hope that feeling is back.
That's awesome. That's so fucking awesome, Angie. I'm glad you said that, and I hope that resonates so deep with somebody, because that's good. That's powerful. Can you talk? Well, not even openly, but are you allowed to talk about your next thing that you're moving into, or? And this won't air for a little while.
Okay.
And if you can't, that's fine. I understand. But I'm proud of you. Like, I've known you forever.
Thank you.
And I think what you've done in this career to move into what you're about to move into, at least a little bit I know of it, I think is so awesome. And if you can, I'd love to talk to you about it.
Yeah. So I did make a career transition. I am leaving the bedside. And I am moving into a very different role within healthcare. It's still very impactful at the bedside, but what I'm doing is quality and safety on a organizational level. When I say organizational level, I mean hospitals. There's hospitals, there's clinics, there's multiple hospitals within an organization, and I'm moving into the quality and safety piece of that. And I'm doing that because I think that this role, the job is basically going to be look at all of the data. Where are we on all these patient safety, all the safety events that occur, or what are patient outcomes? What kind of impact are we having on the community? Do patients like coming to see it, or not like coming to see us? Like is not the right choice of words, but are they satisfied? Do they have a good experience? The best experience they can when they come and see us. I look at all of that data across the whole the whole system, and I'm like, I look at all of the places where it's not great, and I deep dive into those, and we make it better. I think what I will bring to this is that I do have a really solid foundation of relationships across all of these frontline people. I love them genuinely. Mm-hmm. I genuinely care about patients. And so this is more of a big picture on like, how are we doing as a hospital? And are we doing everything we can to create the best outcome for our patients? It's going to be a big, big move to shift from holding somebody's hand when they don't have any family, or hugging a family member, or explaining a procedure and having those kind of interactions, to a bigger global view. But hopefully I'll be able to have a really positive impact.
Oh yeah, I can.
Larger scale.
Sure, that's what I was going to say. This is probably not. I mean, you have paid your dues. Like, you have been that person to watch somebody's last breath. And mm-hmm. I think that the size and magnitude of impact that you can have with this new role may not be directly felt by that nurse or that patient at that moment, but as a holistic view, I think that the impact is going to be far more profound. Mm-hmm. And in my hopes, in the way that, having talked with you and just the brief bit I understand about it. And so I think that like you say, it could take some time, but mm-hmm. It's going to be for the betterment of a much more of a global view of that hospital. And I think that's,
it's what my studies throughout the last 2 years, it's what I have been researching and what I've been studying. It's what I've obtained a higher degree in. When I first decided I was going to get a master's degree in patient safety and quality, most people thought I was nuts.
Yeah.
What? They're like, what? Because most nurses, when they get an advanced degree, they become a nurse practitioner or they become an educator. And this is a fairly new degree. But I did it because I recognized it as a need within my own units. And I thought it was the hardest damn thing that I did. And I went into it because I could see how doing it right, or having more knowledge on how to do it more timely and or more efficiently and sustainably, and have people actually engage, people from patients to frontline staff to engage in this process. And healthcare is going to change. It's always going to change. So how do we stop resisting that change and see it for what it is and why we're doing it, so the implementation is more efficient and people are actually excited and they can see the results of the work that they do for making that effort in change. That was so hard for me to do, and it's always such a challenge. I am almost done. You're getting very tired. Okay, you're getting very tired, and I'm going to come help you go to sleep in a minute. But that was so hard. It was like, oh my gosh, you would see a need, and it was so hard to get everybody to buy into it. So I went into this for my own sake.
Yeah.
Like, how can I help my units change more easily and change for the better and be resilient with this constant change? And as I started learning it and researching it and doing it and implementing it on a small scale, I honestly wasn't thinking about changing positions, but I was walking the walk, and I was approached to take this larger role. So
Well, that's good. I mean,
I hope that
I've seen you kind of be a bit more colorful. You know, it seems like you're excited. Granted, I mean, like you said a second ago, you're feeling the love for it again. But it seems like I just talking to you, I feel the excitement in your voice about this new thing. And maybe it's because it's new. But I think you're going to take it and do something really, really good with it. And I'm excited to see what the future
it needs
holds.
to be meaningful, right?
Yeah.
We can
Everything
collect
does.
data, and we can look at it, and we can try to make the numbers look better. There's 1,000 ways you can make the numbers look better, but does it really have meaning? Is it really impactful for those that it needs to be impactful for?
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes what people that are historically in my role, and that I'm going to be starting here soon, have done. They just make the number look better.
Sure.
And don't really understand how that translates and why that should translate to that person in that bed or that family member standing there. Yeah. And I think my experience will hopefully bring that to that role.
I think it will. I'm excited to see where it goes. Well, Ange, thank you so much for being on. This was a real, an honest joy. It was really good to talk to you. And yeah, I appreciate you coming on. This is obviously we're not going to put anything in the show notes. Unfortunately, nobody can contact you. So we'll leave that at that, but I'm so very appreciative of you being on, and thank you so much for your time. Go put that kid to bed.
Yes. Thank you for having me. All right. Bye.
Have you ever felt?
Are you listening? Damn.